Welcome to Try This at Home. I'm Cliff Bumgardner.
I'm still Harrison Stewart. That is still true.
Harrison, we're back.
We are back, baby.
For our listeners, it has only been a couple of weeks since you guys heard us here on the podcast, but for us, it's been a couple of months since we recorded, because we record pretty far in advance. So yes. I have been looking forward to watching some Mythbusters. I don't know about you.
I definitely have. I may have cheated a little and watched some later season ones just to get me through.
Getting ahead. Nice.
You know, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Who's to say?
You were the kid who read ahead in school, weren't you?
100%.
Yeah.
Come on. and then I would register the guests like, well, I think that this is where it's going. And they're like, very perceptive, Mr. Stewart. Thank you.
We delved deep into your psychology really early in this episode.
Yeah, I don't know why I was unpopular with my peers. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, we hope everybody had a great holiday season and New Year, and we hope that you enjoyed our bonus episodes that went up. We had some great interviews with, of course, Robert Lee, Dr. Heather Joseph Witham, Andrew Farrell popped in for our end of season recap episode. And of course, the man himself, Adam Savage. We are so grateful to everybody for coming on, and also to you guys for making those our most successful episodes of all time. So if you haven't checked those out, please go back and listen. You can also find video versions of the Adam Savage interview, at least, on YouTube. We're going to be doing more video stuff in the next couple of months, and as the show continues to grow. So find us on YouTube, type in Try This at Home. And while you're checking us out in places, consider giving us a review or a rating. You know, we're dealing with machines here. The algorithm likes to be scratched, so we have to do what we can do.
Look, I'll even take a 4-star. You know? I mean, do I want 5? Yeah, of course I want 5. But be honest.
We're already bargaining. We're already bargaining for a better review.
Just 4.
Just give us 4. Please,
just
give us 4.
Just scratch it.
But if you enjoy the show, it does help people find it, so we really appreciate it, and we're excited to be back. Yay. Before we hop into this week's episode, though, a little bit of housekeeping. We'll try to keep it brief. If you guys have listened to us from the beginning, number one, thank you. But number two, you know that something we have struggled with is finding accurate episode orders for Mythbusters. And we can now say we've struggled with this from the very beginning. We've talked about it numerous times. During our break, because of the folks that we got to talk to, we have now talked to a lot of people who worked behind the scenes on the show, and they don't know either.
Nope.
The best we can find is that because of the nature of Mythbusters being a reality, kind of documentary sort of show, it wasn't really collected into seasons the way you would a narrative, drama show that has an arc and has that kind of thing. So it was it depends. It depends on where you were. Australia versus the UK versus the US have different orders. It depends on when episodes came out. There's a bunch of special episodes that were released of like explosion specials and whatnot that completely throw the listings off. So what we've decided going forward to make things easy, we're not going to worry so much about what season the episodes are in. We're going to go off of the original air date of those episodes because we do have that information from the Discovery Channel. So we feel that that is accurate. That is what we're going to do for episodes. If you want to if you want to watch along with us as you listen to the podcast, which we encourage people to do, that's part of the whole experience here. In our episode titles, we are going to be changing our previous episodes, and going forward, the episode numbers, the season and episode number that we list is going to match what is on HBO Max, or just Max now, and Discovery, the Discovery website. So if you're looking for the episodes, that's probably where you will be watching them, and we are going to stay matched to that. If that changes at some point, or if we get new information, we'll update again.
No, we are not changing this again. This is the final word. Game over, man. Game over.
It is crazy how complicated it has been to figure this out. We really did not think this was going to be a problem.
And the bane of your young existence.
Oh my God. And you know me in research, and this has killed me. So that is what we are going to do. We wanted to get that out of the way. Hopefully this is the last time we will ever have to talk about it. Go to our episode title if you want to watch along. Otherwise, just come on and enjoy the myths with us. So,
let's get into it.
With all that out of the way, let's get to our episode. And this week we have kind of a special episode. I think it's a a mile marker in our rewatch here. This is the first ever Myths Revisited episode.
Yes, it is.
Very, very cool. This becomes a staple of the show. This is something that I remember fondly from the show. This is the first one. This one came out on June 8th, 2004, directed, as always, by Peter Rees. And before we hop into our overall thoughts, we get some really special first appearances in this episode. And I wanted to go ahead and talk about them at the top of the show because, man, it feels like the Mythbusters we remember is coming to life.
Yeah.
Episode by episode now. It's so cool. So first, of course, we have Tori Beleche.
Yay!
Tori, before joining Mythbusters, he was a Hollywood model maker and special effects artist. He worked at M5 Industries with Jamie Heineman and also with Adam Savage at Industrial Light and Magic on the Star Wars prequels, Matrix franchise. And this was a fun one that I found. He worked on Starship Troopers.
Oh, great movie.
How cool is that?
I also at first thought that you were just going to say Hollywood model. I was like, is that right?
He was a Hollywood model.
Is that right?
Hey, he's a handsome man. He can pull it off.
Absolutely not. It did surprise me there for a second. I was like, he's a model that can also build things.
Here's his back probably stuff. I mean, he's hot. He's hot. I know he's hot.
No, 100%.
Of course, after joining Mythbusters as part of the build team, this is the first time we hear that mentioned in this episode. Tori would go on to become a full-fledged Mythbuster, working in the M7 shop with Carrie Byron and Grant Imahara. We're not quite there yet, but it was awesome to see him here. And Tori is still working in television today. A few years ago, he did a great show called The Great Escapists with Richard Hammond from Top Gear. If you haven't checked that show out, it's awesome. And very recently, he's come back to the myth-busting world. He has a show called Motor Mythbusters, where they test car-related myths. So
that's awesome.
He is still a Mythbuster to this day on television.
Fantastic.
So, very, very cool.
But not yet in this timeline.
Yeah, not yet in this timeline. He's just on the build team, so we're going to see that come to life.
They're still putting together the team. This is Iron Man 2.
They're assembling, yes.
Yes.
Who's going to die so that they have something to avenge?
Buster.
True. Church of Buster. May he rest in peace.
Forever may he reign.
Next up, we had Christine Chamberlain, who was introduced as the Myth Turn in this episode, which I thought was pretty fun.
Yeah.
She didn't stay with the show super long. I remember her.
I don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember her face, but she wasn't with the show very long. And quite frankly, I couldn't find that much about her. I don't know that she did a whole lot of television after leaving this show. I did find out that before she was on Mythbusters, she was a successful graphic designer, which is pretty neat. And apparently she and her husband have traveled and lived all over the world, including in Saudi Arabia and Dubai.
Cool.
So Mythbusters just gets the coolest people.
Yeah.
Even if they just blow through the show for a little while, it's still like the coolest people you're ever going to see. It's awesome. Speaking of really cool people, last but not least, in our first appearances, we get Scotty Chapman.
Yes.
Scotty's introduced here as a metal worker and fabricator. Also wasn't with the show as a full-time cast member super long. She would come back for like one-offs and specials throughout the years. So she's definitely a face that I remember and associate with Mythbusters, even though she wasn't, quite there as long as Tori or Carrie would be. But she's still around today. Doesn't seem like she's in the entertainment industry from what I can tell, but has a pretty entertaining Instagram. If anybody wants to go find Scotty and check out what she's up to.
So I need to swap that real quick. Scotty is the one that I don't remember.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. How long does she stay around? Do you know that?
I think only about 10 or 12 episodes as a full cast member, and then she just sort of pops back in on specials or things that were previously shot and whatnot before she left the show. But speaking of just how cool the people on Mythbusters are, while I was researching Scotty, I found a detail, and I can't confirm this beyond a Wikipedia confirmation, so I'm just going to put that on Front Street.
Okay.
But according to what I found, she was the bassist for a rock band called Fuzz. Have you ever heard of Fuzz?
Maybe.
Have you ever heard of Weezer?
Yeah. Yes.
Fuzz became Weezer.
What are you saying to me right now?
It was Rivers Cuomo's band before Weezer. And Scotty was the bassist for that band. What is with this cast? They're so cool.
That's awesome.
It drives me nuts just how amazing it is that they were able to put these people together.
Yeah.
Like, that is so cool. I also wanted to give a shout out before we hop into it that even though we've seen Carrie Byron before, this is the episode that really feels like she becomes a member of the show.
This might be her first speaking line.
She had a couple of brief things
In the last season?
the pilots when she when they're scanning her for the airplane
yes.
episode.
Her butt.
Yes.
Yes.
But this is the first time that we've, actually seen her she's introduced as part of the build team, and you start to see some of her personality come through. So this is where it really felt like she was actually on the show, and I think she's here all the way through to, becoming a Mythbuster. So very cool to see her as well. But first episode in a long time, what were your overall thoughts for Myths Revisited?
I loved it. I have so many notes.
Yeah.
Mainly about how intensely annoying the internet is. I mean, it's just like I love the energy that they bring to this episode of why are you making us do this again? Because that's deserved. Like,
this could be called Well Actually, the episode.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously. Like I'm dying to read some of the emails that they received.
I know.
Because like I could just hear the snottiness of the people that were and challenging stuff that like I was just shocked at the stuff that they were challenging when it was like, that was a great myth.
Except
what are you talking about?
We do at one point when we get to Chicken Cannon, we get a moment where Adam is clearly like, why are we doing this? And it comes back around.
It does.
So it's kind of the turnaround there made that kind of worth it to me.
And I am on the record as being a big Chicken Gun guy.
Yes.
I love Chicken Gun. So any excuse to bring that sucker back, I'm here for it.
Well, and that actually gets to my main note about this episode, which was, this is why we remembered everything wrong.
Yes.
There were so many things.
Good point.
Chicken Cannon, Ice Bullet, several, even Goldfinger, which we'll get to pretty early in the episode. Like, all of those are myths where I was like, wait a minute, didn't they do it this way? I don't remember any of it.
Yeah.
This is why.
I could have sworn that was Adam that got painted.
Exactly.
Not Jamie.
I feel like this episode got replayed a lot because it's kind of there's like 7 myths covered in this episode. It's sort of a great, if you've never seen the show before, here's a lot of it really quickly and kind of here's what we do. So I feel like it got replayed quite a bit, and that's why we remember these myths from this episode, not their original episodes.
A lot of ground got covered in this one.
Totally.
A lot, which I mean, part of that is just that, they were revisiting myths, so they were able to cycle through them fairly quickly. But by the end of it, in my notes, I usually break it down by myth when I'm writing stuff down, and I had so many different breaks. I was like, oh wow, they're still going.
Yeah.
We still got stuff to test. Right on.
I think my other big thought with this episode that ever since I watched it kind of early this week, I wanted to kind of stew on it and come back to my notes.
You wanted to pig stew on it?
I wanted to pig stew on it. Oh,
that's a callback.
That's going to be a thing. But as I got to thinking about it, I was like, you know what? We've talked about this some with Mythbusters before. We even talked to Adam a little bit about this when we interviewed him, that there's elements of Mythbusters that I feel like in the YouTube world, we don't fully appreciate how kind of groundbreaking they were for the time that they were in. And this is a kind of thing of this directly communicating with the audience and responding in as close to real time as possible to feedback. Now we're used to that on YouTube, right? We're used to that on a weekly basis with a lot of the content that we watch, or Instagram or whatever. Back then, I feel like this is kind of a hallmark of this era of television, to have a show that was going, no, you can email us and talk to us about this. And then when social media became a thing, it opened the doors even wider. Yeah. But like, this feels like kind of an important television moment, not to be too grandiose about it, of a show that is responding to the viewers in this way. Yeah. It was really cool. And just like hit me of, wow, that's another one of those little Mythbusters magic things that I think made the show stand out and made it kind of feel like you had a relationship with the show, because the viewers are influencing the show and vice versa. Yeah. It's really, really cool and great to see, and made me love that, made me love this episode for that reason.
Especially unique, like you're saying, in the pre-social we just take it so for granted now. Yeah. Like so many creators in so many different industries are just on the other side of a comment or a DM. Probably not as much a DM, but like just the fact that people were actually able to get through to them and influence the direction of the show, remarkable. Absolutely remarkable, especially in 2004.
And just makes for a great episode.
This is honestly one. Some of it could be that I was Mythbusters starved, but ooh, this was good eating.
Myth 1, peeing on the third rail. So if you remember this episode from last season, the myth was about someone, a drunk person, I believe, accidentally peeing on the electrocuted third rail of a subway system and being electrocuted and dying from it. And this is one where I feel like they were pretty effective in how they tested it the first time around. So this isn't the viewer emails on this one weren't about, oh, you got this wrong. Instead, it was people writing in and saying, well, I peed on a farm fence and got shocked.
It's so good. It's so good. And just such a good example of the snottiness, because they're like, well, actually, I did something totally different from you and got different results. Like, well, right. That's A, we covered that the first time. Yes. B, not what we were testing for. C, why? Why were you peeing on something that you knew had at least a possibility to electrocute you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's also kind of funny as a way to start this episode, because it isn't something that they got wrong. It was just hey, let's look at a different aspect of this. So that's what the test is going to be. It's actually about, okay, maybe not a third rail, but what if you had a fence that was much closer to you, different type of current running through it, all that kind of stuff. Could you ultimately get a shock from it? And it's a pretty straightforward myth. They're just going to build two types of fence, electrify them, and pee on them. What else?
That simple.
What else do you want from Mythbusters?
Nothing, man. This is prime Mythbusters here.
This is where we get, though, as they go into the build. This was where we got the first mention of the build team. The first time they've actually said that out loud of, oh yeah, we've got this team that's helping us do this. So this is where we see,
for their first project, they're going to build something for us to pee on.
I hadn't even thought about it.
Welcome to the club, kids. We're going to have fun. We're going to have fun.
Welcome to the show. We're going to pee on your hard work.
Literally.
We see Tori and Carrie here. Tori for the very first time, and Carrie again is the first time as kind of a full-fledged cast member. And it was just awesome. It gave me, seeing those two together gave me this like, oh, this
intense
is a show
nostalgia.
that I remember.
Yes.
You know, it's so great to see them, and it was fun. I'd be really curious to know what the thought process was behind making the build team part of the show. In that, I can understand later, I think, I believe it was either Andrew Farrell or Adam or someone said this when we were talking to them, that they needed to make the second set of Mythbusters just for time purposes.
Keep up, yeah.
Just to keep up. So that makes sense. But, you know, I can see having a build team this season to help them in what they were doing, and again, to help them keep up with the pace. But to take those people and put them on camera is a really smart decision.
Yeah. And
kind of a risk. I mean, the show is a hit by this point, you figure, and they have a winning formula. You know, do you mess with perfection on that? And so it paid off. It was a brilliant idea, but you know, kind of a bold move to do.
Well, I almost feel like it had to be addressed, because I was noticing a lot in this episode that, I mean, of course, Adam and Jamie are always doing things, but they're doing less things. So that means that you either have a ton of dead air, you know, like stuff that you're just not going to show the audience, or you show them. Because it would be so weird if they didn't address the fact that, like, they're like, and here's our unnamed peons that are like doing like all this work.
And I do think too, there's so many myths in this episode. They don't actually spend a lot of time on building. But I'm curious, as we get into more and more episodes with the build team, if this also allows them to show more building.
That's exactly what I was.
And make that a bigger part of the story.
And to handle more myths.
Yes.
You know, like at the beginning, I was like, we cover a lot of ground in this one. Part of that was probably because they had a bigger team.
Yeah. Yeah. And it allows them, you know, the thing we've talked about of the whole storytelling versus testing methodology stuff. This allows them to do a little bit more of that nitty gritty that we remember from the show. So yeah, it's a genius decision, and it's another one of those they were clearly paying attention and tweaking and figuring out. But it's a pretty bold one to make. So I think it's cool. I just thought it was really neat. When they get to the actual test on this one, it's all you know, as we said, there's so much in this episode that it's pretty efficient. It's pretty quick that how they go through the myths. But as they're getting to the actual test, Jamie decides he's not going to pee on the fence. And it brought a question to my mind, which was, would you have done it?
100%.
Same.
In fact, I thought, shows how weird our minds are. I was thinking about that as it was happening. I was like, Jamie, why? Come on, man. I've watched you do weirder, more dangerous things. You got buried alive, sir.
Yeah.
You don't want to like send a little zap up your. That was not a good whistle, but you know what I'm getting at. Like, come on.
Adam even hits it, but Adam calls him boring.
Really he's not exactly wrong. All love and respect to Jamie, but like, come on.
Even better was
we built 2 fences.
Yeah, this is a double urinal. All right, we have it set up for this. Why are you not going to do it? It was even better when Adam continues to dig into the mythology of the Heinemann when he says,
all that time you spent as a political prisoner in South America and they never once attached a battery to your.
Well, why do you think I don't want to do it?
Fool me once, Mr. Savage.
Fool
me once.
I love that we've now hit the point where Jamie is playing into it. Like he's coming, he's like, he gets the energy and he's playing it back up. It was great.
Yeah.
I love that. We mentioned this earlier that throughout this episode, they cut around a lot to keep things simple. We're not doing that. We're going myth by myth. It just keeps things a lot cleaner for the podcast. But it is funny that when they get to the actual test, the test is on the same day as the later Goldfinger test. And so Adam is bald.
Yes.
Like completely as hairless as he can possibly be.
Except for the goatee.
He looks very scrubbed because he had to get the paint off. And he even says at one point, like, I was painted gold and had a rectal probe today. and now I'm gonna pee on an electric fence.
And now I'm going to risk sending a current through my. Yeah, that was a better one.
There you go. Yeah. You got it. Yeah. He actually asked the EMTs if the electricity will, quote, cause his wang to malfunction.
Yes, he did. And it's a fair question. I'm ill convinced that many people needed to be standing in the room as he was doing it.
Well, here's what made that worth it though, is did you notice Carrie in the background? She's just her expression through the whole thing is just like, what are these boys doing? These 12-year-old boys are just making pee jokes. Everything on her face is like, oh my God. It was awesome. She was that Greek chorus, just telling us how to feel.
Yeah, exactly.
It was awesome. Also, I feel spare a thought for the EMTs who already had to give Adam a rectal probe, and now the same guys on the same day are watching him pee on the electric fence.
And also, did you notice that like everybody else is behind him?
Yeah,
not the EMTs.
No. They had the good seat.
Adam asked Jamie if he wanted to hold hands while he was peeing.
Just to get a little shock.
Yes. Oh, man.
Adam's, throughout this entire episode, and we'll get into it even more with Goldfinger, Adam's shamelessness makes this episode to me.
It's magnificent.
His ability to just go all out and just let go on camera.
Yeah.
Again, it's that character difference between him and Jamie, but it just makes it so much fun because he does not seem embarrassed one bit, and that's what makes it okay for us to laugh at it.
Which is so much better. Like it would be one thing if we were just watching this in a vacuum, but having heard Adam's entire spiel on being real and throwing shame out the window and stuff like that, it just makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And it makes me connect with it even more than I already was.
Yeah. But the only way to be yourself on camera is to be completely open.
Yep.
And it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And
you just throw it all out there.
And that is one of those, we talked about this at the end of our Adam episode when we were doing kind of our recap. But man, that's one of those like simple but super unique parts of Mythbusters.
Very endearing.
That realness is throughout the whole show, and it made me laugh here, and it entertained me to no end throughout this whole episode. The test here, very simple. Adam pees on the chain link fence and gets a shock, and they actually see it on the heart monitor.
That's so good.
That's a heck of a jolt.
That to go all the way up the main vein to the heart. That's fun.
And he says it's no big deal, but you're still getting a zap.
You're still getting a little zap.
That doesn't seem like a good time.
I do absolutely. My favorite part is that in the wrap up, they're like, yeah, this still proves exactly what we said, which is that you have to be very close to the thing, and it has to be a steady stream, and yada, yada, yada.
I think
still
I'm
busted.
Looking at my notes, I think they actually said busted, even though technically what they were testing here was proven, but it was going back to their original result.
Which says to me they just wanted to zap Adam in the hoo-ha. Like, that's it. That's all it boils down to. And you know what? Cliff? They're right. They're exactly right.
I just, like to get a confirmation of my assumption that an extremely low amperage, high voltage hit is not going to perhaps cause my to malfunction from here on in.
Myth 2, Gold Fingers. How excited were you that this next season starts off with a James Bond reference?
So excited until... Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. There's a part in this one that I am not at all convinced was necessary. But made for good television.
All right. Well, before we get there, if you cast your mind back to the last time that they addressed this myth, it was about the movie Goldfinger, in which a woman is killed by being painted with gold paint. They say she dies of suffocation of the skin, which led to a myth that the actress playing that character also died. Shirley Eaton, I believe her name was. She did not, and they actually had her in the last episode, but still the question was, could you die from being painted with gold paint? And the weird thing was, the first time they did this myth, this is one that it completely makes sense to me why they retested it, because their first result was so inconclusive, because they painted Jamie and he started to feel weird. His blood pressure went up, his heart rate went up, he was like sweating, and so they had to take the paint off. They ultimately said that was busted because she was still alive, but it did leave this big question about why did that happen, and actually, is it more dangerous than we thought? That wasn't answered the first time around. So I did like that they came back to this one.
Yeah,
and of course, to do this right, they need a new guinea pig, and it's got to be Adam.
Of course it does.
It's got to be Adam.
Of course it does.
This is what I remembered the first time we talked about this.
Yes.
Was Adam stripping down, joking with the EMTs. It's just magic. He is... I get the comedy the first time around of Jamie being so straight-laced, and that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
To me, it's even funnier when you take the weird situation and you put Adam in it, and he's just going to...
He just embraces it.
He embraces it fully, and he just makes it even greater.
Yep.
It's so much fun.
It is so good. And then they have this doctor on hand.
Oh my God. Can we talk about the doctor? It's my note was they bring in Einstein's clean-cut cousin. Dr. Remo Morelli is this man's name.
Remo Morelli.
Already, we're in the second myth of this new batch of episodes, and we already have a contender for top side character.
I think so.
This guy was... What did you love about this guy?
Well, I loved that he could not look the camera straight when he gets into... He's like, well, last time you did it wrong because that's not the type of temperature you want to take. It's like, excuse me. What'd you just say? Well, it's Adam. You know how we're going to get that temperature. You already know.
Yep. And as Jamie says, I'll get the lard.
Lard comes up a few times.
Quite a bit in the history of Mythbusters, it turns out. There's a lot of lard. Yeah, they say that they need to be more accurate. And so instead of using an ear thermometer, they're actually they need a core body temperature.
I don't believe this for 1 second.
And there's only one way to get that.
Yeah.
Which is a rectal probe.
A rectal probe.
Of course.
Yes. A rectal thermometer, not a probe.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's right.
We're so used to probe coming after rectal.
There were aliens in the shop that day.
Yes, and then aliens came in, took a quick rectal probe. I on the one hand, I don't believe for 1 second that this was medically necessary. On the other hand, I'm so glad they insisted.
Comically necessary.
Comically necessary.
If not medically.
1,000%. Yes.
This is also, spare a thought for Christine. This is where they first introduced her. This was her first day. That is a pretty weird day one on a job. I've had some weird jobs. This
I've never
tops.
had to paint. a hairless man.
I've never had to paint my boss gold and watch him get a rectal probe. That's a weird glass door, kind of story. Like, not putting that on LinkedIn. That's all I'm saying.
No. I also, again, not convinced it was necessary, but the rectal probe was just so fun.
Did you notice that the EMT breathed on it before he sent it north?
Sure did.
Sure did.
Sure did. They also did it twice, one of which was self-administered, the other of which the EMT had to take care of.
After doing rock, paper, butthole to decide who was going to have to do it.
And this apps, and the guy who lost that
was the
rock,
boss.
paper, butthole was the boss, and then was just like, nah, I'm in
pulled
charge.
rank.
Yeah, he pulled rank. That guy. That guy. Good comedy. Bad bossing. Bad bossing right there. That's not, you don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in this one, I still felt a little bit.
Adam was like, go on.
Yeah. Just a completely gold man. He looked like a trophy of Heisenberg.
He really did.
Like a Heisenberg Oscar.
He looked like an Oscar. Yeah, there it is. There it is.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did, like, even though, they do this.
You're goddamn right. Can I say that? I don't know if that's.
I guess we'll find out.
We'll mark it just in case.
We'll see if it winds up in the show. We'll find out later. The thing with this, they do the test. Adam's vitals stay completely normal. And actually, during the test, they do a blood pressure check on Jamie and find that he just has a naturally high blood pressure. That this is maybe just part of his physiology.
Shocking.
Yeah, but the thing about
the man with the beet red face at all times. You're telling me that guy
who runs a flat 10-minute mile like nobody's business.
I forgot about that. That was incredible.
That was. But the thing about it to me that didn't make sense was they kind of chalk it up to like, oh, well, it's his physiology.
Yeah.
And that's why we got the weird result the first time. Mm-hmm. But Jamie also felt weird the first time around. And they don't really talk about that or account for that it wasn't just the vitals that made them stop the test. It was that Jamie actually felt weird. And maybe that could be he's doing it on camera and it's weird and he's embarrassed or what. I mean, there's a lot of other factors that could be a
there's
part of
nothing
that.
weird or embarrassing that happens on camera.
Never.
In this show.
Of course not. Of course not. Just ask Carrie about her first day on the job.
Whoa.
But like, that was a little bit weird to me. That was the one thing that they kind of quickly go, oh, okay, it's just Jamie's naturally like that, and Adam's not, and so therefore myth busted. And like, it's obviously busted. That there's plenty of science that backs this up, but that was my one little like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, this doesn't have anything to do with anything. Did you notice that so of course he has to be wearing little skimpies,
of course,
again. Did you notice that his gold skimpies, like the butt was completely rubbed off? Like the gold was rubbed
because I think these are the
butt?
same ones from last time.
That would be amazing.
So I think they were either probably washed or like something, and
that's one answer. The other is such repeated spankings.
Well, I mean, where do you rub your Oscar statue?
On the butt,
of course,
right on the butt. That's how you get the good luck.
Yeah,
people think it's the bald head. It's the butt.
It's the butt.
Don't rub people's butts unless they want you to, and ask you to, ask you to.
Or don't drip gold paint down their butt, which is what Jamie did to Adam during this. And then, did you notice that when Jamie drips the paint and Adam is like freaking out, we get a genuine, probably the most real Jamie Heineman laugh we've seen yet. We just see him just like giggling and so happy. He just did this to Adam.
Oh, and Adam just takes it in such stride. He's like, hey there, what you doing?
What are you gonna do?
I know. But just like, it takes it. There are so many people that can fake shamelessness.
Yeah.
That can act for the camera like they're cool with something. Adam is just cool with everything.
Yeah.
He's just the chillest dude.
Doesn't care.
He's like, oh, is it for the camera? Bring it on.
Bring it on.
God.
This one was ultimately busted. Like we said, maybe a few weird things about this, but overall, great to see Adam back in the being the one in the gold paint and finally putting this one to rest because it is pretty straightforward.
Christine, when you sent in your tape to Mythbusters, those many weeks ago.
This is totally what I had in mind. It's amazing.
I think in some countries I might be, ordained as the supreme ruler after a ceremony like this.
Myth 3. Here we are, Harrison. We are back at the chicken cannon.
My favorite.
This was your favorite explosion from last season, right? Isn't that what we listed?
Absolutely. Because again, the scientists say matter can't be created or destroyed. I think they proved otherwise.
They've never shot a chicken out of metal plate.
They've never shot a chicken out of metal plate where you can watch the atoms dematerialize in real time.
You see universes being created as it just pop, 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 pop. Yeah, this, of course, legendary episode, something we had a lot of fun with last time. And it comes from a true story, that they use large air cannons to test bird strike on aircraft windscreens.
Wonderful.
And that, in a particular case, someone was doing this. They kept blowing right through all of their windscreens, and they contacted NASA and said, "What's wrong?" And NASA, of course, said, Harrison, would you like to say it?
Gentlemen, thaw your chickens.
Beautiful. So the question is, does a frozen chicken cause more damage than a thawed chicken? And this was really interesting because a lot of the viewer complaints seemed to me to be exactly what we talked about.
Yeah.
When we picked up on the episode. So last time around, they had some issues with the testing. They initially tested it on an actual fuselage from an airplane before finding out that those windshields weren't rated for bird strike. I would love to know what airline that was so I don't go on those planes. Seems bad.
You know which one.
Seems like fair. That's fair enough. But that kind of rendered the test moot. So they went back and they did it again by, as we said, firing the chickens at a metal plate and just measuring the velocity with the thesis that if it's the same mass going the same speed, it's going to be the same damage. And I think we even said at the time, maybe that maths out somehow, like kind of like a feather in an anvil. You drop them, and if something happens, like science, my brain hurts. Like maybe that maths physics out, but it didn't really make sense. I think to us, because what we're talking about is destructive power,
right?
And of course, as we all know,
what counts is penetration.
I love Robert Lee. I love that man so much.
If I'm not mistaken, he says that a few times in this episode.
He has fun saying it.
His delivery is so good. There are even times that it's not. Which that I meant to say this at the top. That is something about this episode. Bit more sexually charged this season.
Yes. Yeah.
In more ways than one.
We're getting some more blue humor. I think that some of that Australian humor coming into the show.
It's
great.
coming in. It is.
It's bawdy. Not quite dirty.
No.
Just a little saucy.
Just a little body. Yeah.
But yeah, so the idea here though is, I think they actually say that the viewers who wrote in said it's like comparing a cannonball to a lemon cream pie. Like, it doesn't matter if the mass is the same. If one's going to break up when it hits the target and the other's not, then the one that doesn't break is going to do more damage, you would think.
And I hear you. I really do. We said the same. However, that email reads a lot to me like you don't want them to fire a lemon cream pie out of a cannon, and I just disagree. We will never see eye to eye on this point.
Why would you try to take that from the world?
Right. Well, I think that we actually had a similar reaction as it sounds like the audience was having in real time, which is that we came at it early on in the first season as they weren't testing it scientifically in X, Y, and Z. But we kind of, over the course of that first season, came to the conclusion that it doesn't matter because the storytelling is so strong. And
right.
My God, is it fantastic to look at.
Yeah.
So that for me, that's why this is an odd one to take such issue with. Because it's like, but did you see what they produced? I mean, I get where you're coming from on the scientific front.
Yeah.
But you cannot look me dead in the eye and say that chicken evaporating was not one of the funniest things you've ever seen. You cannot do it.
Oh, totally. And I think even the argument might just be like, not even that, certainly not that it wasn't entertaining, but that they could go even further with it, which I think is what this was. Because what was really interesting that this, the challenge to their methodology brought out is even in this episode, they still have a really hard time figuring out how to do this. Like it turns out to be, from a scientific standpoint, very complicated to figure out and to get that methodology right. Now, the television part is we just get to see a bunch of chickens get shot at stuff.
Yay!
For a whole nother episode. But it was interesting how they kept, this is one that they kept having to deal with. Like it wasn't an easy thing to figure out how to actually get to a real result on this one. And that was cool to see them, that kind of tilted things more back in the science category, as we've talked about in the course of the show. This felt like some real testing and experimentation that went on.
Yeah. Adam also hated it.
Oh, Adam was done.
Which was really amusing.
Adam was done with this myth. You can tell throughout the episode he is just not having it, that they're having to do this again.
Until.
Exactly. Well, we should go in order. That they start out by shooting the birds at foam blocks.
Oh, yes. You're right.
That is where Adam at first is like, see, it's the same result, because they get about the same result. The penetration is the same from a frozen and a thawed bird, and they're like, yeah, that's it. Screw it. And Jamie makes the point, we're not getting anything from this. Like it's too inconsistent. The birds are moving weirdly. It's blowing right through all the targets. That doesn't give us anything to compare to. Like Jamie's actually the one really leaning on the kind of the scientific method in this of we need something. It just looks random, and random does not help us determine anything. And so the test that they ended up coming up with is really cool, to build a box with individual panes of glass that they can shoot the chickens at. And hopefully, this is what we said last time I noticed this when they mentioned this, dial the cannon back until the thawed bird is not breaking all the way through the glass, and then fire a frozen bird at the same speed. And then you are truly testing for destructive power. Took them a while to get to that, but man, that is I really enjoyed seeing them come all the way around in their testing to that methodology, because it felt by the end like, oh, this is actually conclusive.
Yeah. I also thought that it was such a good decision. At first I questioned it because, again, I want to see chicken go bye-bye, but they have the camera trained on Adam when it fires. And you can see him realize that, like, oh, dang.
It's a brilliant moment.
It was so good.
That moment, I'm glad you pulled that out.
Over it. And then he's like, okay, whoops.
They hold the shot on Adam. So they fire a thawed bird. It breaks the first and fourth panes of glass, which was interesting and weird that happened.
Yeah.
But then they fire the frozen. And you're right. When they fire the frozen, they keep the camera trained on Adam. And you just hear on the background. And you see his face change. And it was a genius editing decision. Whoever made that call, that is brilliant. Because
Fantastic.
like you said, you see it dawn on him, and you also see, it's like Adam said to us, you almost see the ego leaving this time. Instead of arriving, you see it go out, and you see him go, oh, I was wrong.
Yeah.
And it was worthwhile to do this again.
Yes.
Even though I've been kind of a pill about it this whole time.
Yeah.
This was worth doing. And like, even scientifically, that's a really important moment. Like seeing someone acknowledge their wrongness on camera and be very real. And in that moment, I thought that was brilliant. That's like one of my favorite singular moments we've seen on the show yet, I think.
Yeah.
Is just that decision to keep the shot trained on Adam.
Yeah. Oh, and especially because at first, again, I wanted to see it happen, but then only seeing Adam, hearing the glass break, and then they showed the Wile E. Coyote-esque like hole that goes all the way through all of the panes of glass, like a perfect chicken-sized hole. I was like, guys, I doubted you. I was wrong. I'm with Adam on this one. I was wrong.
Yeah.
That's good storytelling.
It was fantastic. And a really interesting result. This is I think the only time on this episode that they reverse their original decision and go, you know what?
It with a plausible.
Yeah. And did you notice that? It's our first
plausible.
It's the first time we've heard plausible as a real result.
Yeah.
They don't yet have confirmed, right?
No.
Because that's for myths where it's like 100%. Oh yeah, this is real. This one's more in the it could be real category. But we get the sign, we get the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. This is one that you would have to devote an entire episode, have varying, methodology to say 100% certain confirmed.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they left it at plausible. I thought that was smart.
And I'm guessing that we also just don't have confirmed yet. That maybe they didn't realize they needed a third just yet, because we don't get it confirmed anywhere else. We only get plausibles
Or busted.
Well, we get some busteds, but we don't get a confirmed. So I don't know that was a thing just yet.
Ooh.
Yeah, they're still evolving.
Still evolving.
I've actually put more thought into this particular experiment than any of the other experiments that we've done. It's one of those simple things that turns out to be very difficult.
My prediction is the glass was a poor way to go, and I think we might just blow through all 12 sheets here. Because if you go through one, you're going to go through all of them. Glass is not that flexible.
Myth 4, ice bullet. Can you make a deadly vanishing bullet out of ice? Now, this was one of the weirdest myths.
Yeah.
Last time when we saw it, specifically because, and they only mention it briefly here, and I'm glad, they mention again that this has something to do with the JFK magic bullet theory, which I've never heard before. We talked about this a ton last time. If you want to go back to that episode, to our ice bullet episode, you can hear us go into depth of how it makes no sense.
Zero.
But the weirdest thing was, and I swear I'm right about this, I watched the episode like 2 or 3 times the first time we talked about ice bullet. In that episode, they never actually fired an ice bullet because they had so many problems freezing it. If you remember, they never fired a just ice bullet, which was my thing in that episode of they end up freezing meat and they end up freezing other things and calling that an ice bullet. But I'm pretty sure I'm right that they never actually fired an ice bullet, which we do get to see them do, at least in this episode.
I mean, yeah, kind of. But I'm sorry. I'm annoyed with the people that like got upset over this because I have to imagine that the people that were pushing them the hardest to retest this were the JFK people, were the people that can't accept like any version of any like thing. They're just so dead set that like, no, there's nonsense going on here that we have to like, this one's tiresome to me.
Yeah.
Like I feel bad for them that they have to keep reinventing the wheel on this because, actually, you didn't freeze it correctly. You didn't freeze it. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It still has to come out
that was
of the barrel very hot. What do you think is going to happen?
Because that was the idea, right? Was that they didn't freeze it slow enough to make enough ice crystals that maybe it would be hard enough and robust enough that it could survive.
Yeah.
In the barrel of the gun when it's actually being fired. But
it's a weird hill to die on.
It is a weird hill to die on. This myth is the place I made the note about how great it is to see the build team, though, because they launch into this whole build for the silicone molds for the bullets and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, wow, this gives it so much pace when you see the build team and you have this much building to cut to. So I did like that aspect of this myth, but I would agree, this from the beginning, Ice Bullet has been very strange to me.
Yeah.
And this didn't really, I was glad to see them actually fire just an ice bullet.
Yeah.
But the result is exactly what you would expect. It burns out. It goes bye-bye.
I think it's just such a theoretically cool idea for a thriller that like there's a myth that'll happen in a later episode of this season that is also something that you're like, but I've seen it in movies so many times that you just want it to be true. But guys, give it a rest.
Yeah, this is one of those weird ones where there just doesn't feel like, even though it's a cool idea, there isn't enough there. Whereas like explosive decompression is another one of those movie things that proves not to be true.
Yeah.
But there's so much they can do with that test.
Yeah.
That it really takes it to a whole other level. These are actually very similar myths, I think, in concept.
That's a great point.
But yeah, there's just not a whole lot to this one, and they bust it pretty roundly once again.
Well, because it's just the first step of an idea. You know what I mean? Like all it is like we've been smoking it. Dude, I just thought of like the sickest way to do an assassination. Like, what if you froze a bullet? It would leave no trace. And then that's as far as they thought about it, you know? Like, none of the anything that comes. Like, step 2 immediately disproves it,
But they accidentally told it to their cousin who worked at the CIA. And the cousin's like,
Who was like, yeah, we'll spend several $1 million trying to develop that. Why not?
Quite a good idea you have there.
So we finally put this one to rest.
Yes, you cannot shoot a frozen water bullet from a rifle like they do in the movies. It just can't be done. You're going to end up with vaporized water. All right, so stop emailing me.
Myth 5, cell phone explodes gas station. Now, this is where I'm with you on I am annoyed that people annoyed them about it. Because I love this myth, and I thought it was so roundly busted the first time around. For folks who don't remember, this is a myth about can a ringing cell phone blow up a gas station? Can it essentially light the gas vapor that's in the air at a gas station and blow it up? And the first time around, I mean, they very roundly busted that no, even making a charge, an active shock was barely enough to cause an explosion.
Yeah.
And they also proved that it's far more likely to be static electricity and that there have been gas station fires as a result of that, and that a cell phone doesn't nearly create enough heat at any point in its cycle to cause that explosion. But apparently fans wrote in and said that they wanted to examine more about the spark producing power of phones. Specifically, that was the part that they wanted to focus on. I was glad when they brought this myth back that they cut out all the weird stalking they did the first time around.
I was not pleased to have the panty rubbing machine not returned. That was missed. That was missed.
Harrison just sitting there watching going, but where's the panty machine?
Where is it? I know you have it in there.
I want to see it come off the wall.
Bring it back.
They have, I think it's 2 or 3 different tests they did here about the actual ways that a cell phone could produce a spark. The first is about when does the phone put out the most electricity. Yeah. So they do some tests. The testing was
was interesting. Yeah.
About when a phone is actually when is it putting out the most charge?
Yeah.
And it's when it's connecting to the base station. When a call is either beginning or like it's making a call or receiving a call, that's when you get the most. But it is still nowhere near enough to actually cause a fire or light something on fire.
Yeah.
They do this again with the antenna on a phone to say, well, what if it was connected? What if it hit something metal and you had an arc? Of course, this is 2004, so we're 2005, 2004. Where are we in our run? 2004 still.
You said
so
four.
Yeah, so it's still 2004, so it's still actual antennas on phones. So that makes sense that they were going to test that. They even took the plastic off the antenna at one point.
I thought that was kind of smart because, it's possible that after repeated usage, sure.
And we talked about last time, I felt it again here, that this is one of those, like, cell phones are still new enough that, like you just said, it's like, anything's possible. I don't know how they work. It could happen. So, it does kind of make sense that people would think that, but still nothing on that. And then the last one, this is the one that surprised me because I thought this might have the most legs, was shorting a battery. Actually trying to make a spark off the battery in a phone.
Yeah.
And they tried again and again and had a really hard time even ripping the safety protections off the battery to get any sort of spark, which of course tells me it's not a Samsung. Please don't sue us, Samsung.
You're on notice.
That's a joke. Protected by parody. Thank you very much. No. But that was the one I thought actually could have legs.
Yeah.
Like we have now, all these years later, we have seen phones light on fire. And so, it wouldn't surprise me.
Oh, but not these types of phones.
Not like exactly
that's the. But also, I mean, this whole myth is one of those of which there are many on this show. It's just what happens when a technology that is not well understood by the majority of the people that use it, myself included. Right. I'm not saying I understand cell phones any better than other people, but it's like once you have that vacuum of knowledge there that people don't know a whole lot about it, they just know, well, it's way above my pay grade, therefore maybe this is true about it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's when they rush in to fill in, all these nonsense things. We didn't even get like an induced explosion this time.
Yeah. Well, that is one of the things with these sort of mini tests that they're doing is that none of these could they really None of these have the normal Mythbusters arc.
Yeah.
It's really kind of like it's one test per, and then they move on, which makes sense from a production perspective. But yeah, you don't get the satisfaction of, oh, we are going to make this thing blow up by the end and make that happen. But this one was busted yet again.
Imagine this. Nothing is happening.
Myth 6. Got a lot of myths in this episode.
Quite a
This
few.
is Biscuit Bullet or Biscuit Bazooka, but
I
only
didn't know why they called it Biscuit Bullet.
yeah, that's a
confused me.
redo. I think Biscuit Bazooka was better, the first name. But this is kind of the Biscuit Bazooka myth. They're not actually going to go back and retest that myth. They have an addition to the myth about things getting hot in a car. If you remember the original Biscuit Bazooka myth, it's one of my favorites from the first season, actually from the pilots even, where there's a story about a woman who has groceries in her car. She has a can of biscuits in there. They get too hot. They actually explode, and the can hits her in the back of the head, and she thinks she's been shot. Pretty funny, kind of internet story. And they find that it's really plausible that it does get hot enough in a car to set off cans of biscuits, and it could potentially happen. This time around, it's actually about aerosol cans. And if you leave an aerosol can in a car, will it explode? I think they said they even had instances or stories of cans exploding and embedding themselves in the seats of the car. So there being that much force coming off of a can. And that's what they're going to be testing this time around. So not really a revisit, more of a appendix to the initial myth.
Yeah. I don't know. This was another. So this one is similar to the third rail, where it's like, well, but what about this unrelated topic? It's like, do you watch the show, or do you just spend the entire time going, they didn't prove nothing because they didn't prove the thing that I wanted them to do? It's like, that's not okay.
We do have a podcast where we kind of do that sometimes.
Kind of the entire podcast.
Maybe we are in a glass house.
Where we just act like little snots the whole time. Yeah, but I'm hoping to induce Inception, where it's just little snots all the way down.
Yeah, there you go.
Then people are writing into us saying, well, you didn't talk about it in this way.
There we go.
Yeah, just
It's
cause an infinite loop.
Infinite loop of snots.
Yes.
Yeah. I did. One thing I did like about this one is I feel like it's in that category. We've seen this before of almost like public service myths, where it's sort of like, I have wondered. I mean, there are all sorts of things that I don't leave in my car because I'm afraid of, if it gets too hot, what's going to happen? It was actually kind of cool to see, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but that, they don't really, it would take a lot of heat to get them to explode, and even if they did, it's not really going to do anything. It's just going to like psh, and leak.
Yeah.
I have seen, you throw an aerosol can in a fire.
Oh,
I've seen those.
dope.
Yeah, those will don't do that at home.
On
everyone.
Minecraft.
Yeah, on Minecraft. We've seen it on the internet.
Yeah.
Those will really explode. So that's kind of what I had in my head.
Yeah.
And you don't really get that here. We do get introduced to something we have never seen before on the show, and it comes out of nowhere, which is Earl the Cadillac.
The Earl.
I was so confused.
I was too.
We will get some answers in a future episode about
Yeah.
where this car comes from.
Yeah.
But for this episode, they just go, oh, we're going to use Earl, the Cadillac. And I'm like, why are you putting these in a Cadillac?
I thought that I had forgotten something from last season.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I was like, where does he come from? Oh, the future, actually.
And I was kind of like, well, they've come a long way from using Adam's car.
Yeah.
I got a Cadillac now. That's amazing.
It's not the first car I would want to blow stuff up inside.
Right.
I'll say that.
Right. Yeah, it is a little bit weird. But they find that they can't even get the car hot enough under normal conditions. And so they end up putting the cans in a kiln.
Right in the kiln.
And they have to get them up, I think they said over 300 degrees.
Yeah.
And it explodes, but that wouldn't happen in a car, and it doesn't really do a whole lot of damage. This was, so they busted this ultimately. Like I said, I didn't really feel like this belonged in the episode necessarily, because it really had nothing to do with the original myth.
Yeah.
When you think about it, but it is one of those practical, you talk about all the time, the things you remember from the show are the things you can use in daily life. I feel like this kind of fits into that category. So maybe that's what makes it worthwhile.
Hey, what I learned is don't let your car get over 300 degrees,
It's good to know. Don't let your Cadillac
Don't
specifically.
let my Cadillac.
If you park a
Become
Cadillac
the-
near the surface of the sun, you're gonna have problems.
You're gonna have a bad time.
There's no doubt Earl will be one hot caddy in this sun. But will it be hot enough to cause detonation?
There is a small chance of danger if, say, the propellant of some of the cans is definitely flammable. That could then explode and give a much bigger kahwump than we expect.
And myth 7, our final myth in this episode, exploding implants. So this is also a myth we have seen before. Story of people who have breast implants going up in airplanes and the cabin pressure making the implants explode. Can that actually happen? The first time around, this was tested pretty thoroughly and didn't get any explosions. But they actually found out, this one I thought was worth going back to because they had some different types of implants that they had not tested the first time around, or not necessarily implants, but actually inserts, bra inserts that they're going to test. Inflatable bra inserts, which, God, that's weird.
No, it's awesome. It's fantastic.
I have never heard of that before this episode.
No, I hadn't either. And also, based on the advertisement that they showed for it, I can certainly understand why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But
designed by the patriarchy.
I was very interested in this one. Seemed like it might be more plausible.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because this is not something that is like we talked about it in the episode that we covered it, like it's not underneath layers of muscle and tissue and all that jazz, you know. So like maybe this could blow up.
The one thing about this myth that made me a little bit sad is in the recap, we saw Dr. Heather Joseph Witham, and I realized we're not going to have a lot more of her on the show.
I know.
I think we are nearing the last days of her on the show, which makes me a little bit sad because she's a huge part of the show to me.
Sometimes you just got to send someone in to tell it like it is.
Exactly.
You know?
Sometimes you just have to cut to her going, yeah, this is racist. And,
yeah. Pretty simple. We just want to justify animal cruelty. Yeah. Next question. You know, like
I don't know why you needed a folklorist for that. I think you could have. You didn't need to come to
on your
me.
own.
Yeah, you could have gotten there on your own. But
now, Cliff, there is a mannequin that they put a bra onto.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Has a name.
Yeah. Do you have that clip?
I don't have that clip pulled.
Okay. I'll just spoil it then. They called this mannequin Jane. Cliff. There is some exceedingly low-hanging fruit on this one, considering that the other mannequin, presumably male, is Buster. What is the name of this mannequin in truth?
Oh, it should be
Busty.
It's Busty.
It's Busty. It has to be. This isn't my joke, you understand. This is just the universe's correct joke that it placed there. They didn't reach for it. I understand why they didn't reach for it. But like, it is the right answer given the myth.
That's why we're doing this podcast.
That's exactly why.
So we can go back and right the wrongs.
Go back and pick all the low-hanging fruit that they left on the tree for a very good reason.
It's Busty. I mean,
Busty.
Come on. From here on out.
Buster and Busty.
Too good.
Man and wife.
Well, on this one, it's the same
mannequin and wife.
Oh, I now pronounce you mannequin and wife.
I missed it.
Man, where were you 20 some odd years ago? 19
Second
years ago?
grade.
And you still would have made that joke.
Oh, big time.
It's the perfect time.
Yeah.
You could have been a writer.
I just would have yelled it. That's the only difference.
Yeah, they do the same thing as last time. They actually put the inserts in the bras on Busty. I'm calling her Busty from now on out. And put her in a vacuum pressure tank and take the pressure up. And they find that in order to get much of a reaction, they do get some swelling. They do get some things happening. But it's at the vacuum equivalent of way above what a typical
space.
Yeah, it's basically in space. Yeah, don't wear your bra implants to space.
Shouldn't do that.
And you'll be fine.
Yeah.
If you're going to go into a black hole,
Yes.
maybe leave those at home.
Perhaps, yes. If you're going to interstellar that, maybe leave the implant at home.
But otherwise,
you're fine. I love they have like potatoes in there or something. And
I didn't notice this.
Yeah, and because it does expand.
Yeah.
The blow up bras.
Yeah, the inflatable piece.
The inflatable piece. And like it makes a yoink noise when like one of the potatoes flies out. Like,
it's very
well done, editor.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. Yeah. Not quite as good as our squishy noise from last time with the biscuits.
Gonna top that.
Nothing's gonna top that.
That's an all-time noise.
Myth sounds revisited.
Yeah.
Just all the best sound effects of Mythbusters.
Without any preamble, we just play them in order. You'll be shocked to learn where these come from.
Can you place them with their episodes? But this one was busted, and that wraps up our very first.
This one was busted.
It's busted, not just busted.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course.
But that wraps up our first ever Myths Revisited episode.
Woo!
Really enjoyed this. We had those few kind of weird myths in the middle here and there, but overall it was great to see them go back and do some stuff. And I think this whole episode, to me, was worth it for the chicken cannon.
So much fun.
Results. Like
and
coming all the way around on that one and having it reverse their original conclusion. It's great. That's science, right? That's part of it. And see that again to that point of being real on camera, seeing them make mistakes and find new ways to do it. God, it makes for a good show.
Yeah. I also really hope that they never, they probably do, but I really hope that they never in later revisited episodes lose like the fine energy, because I loved that about this episode.
I just hope for no reason they have to do chicken cannon every time just to piss Adam off. He's just like, again.
8.0? Really?
Although I would love to see the canon get better each time as to what they would build over the years.
Yes.
That would be pretty satisfying.
We're launching a chicken to the moon.
Well, everybody, thank you for listening this week. Please come back next week. And if you want to watch ahead, our episode will be Scuba Diver and Car Capers. A lot of fun myths in store. But until then, thanks for listening.
Bye-bye, babies. Try This at Home is produced by Slugline Media. The show is written, hosted, edited, and shot onto the internet by Cliff Bumgardner and Harrison Stewart. Our music is by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. You can follow the show on Instagram at TryThisPod or email us trythisathomepod@gmail.com.